Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today, we're diving into a world that's, well, as intricate as it is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun, a four-part science fiction series that really isn't like anything else you've ever read.
It's true. Wolfe has this way of dropping you right into this strange future Earth without a lot of exposition. You're discovering the world right alongside Severian, our narrator, who, well, he's a torturer in the decaying city of Nessus.
Okay.
And let me tell you, his perspective is, well, unique.
Right, and that's what makes it so compelling. It's not just a story, it's like an experience, You're constantly questioning what's real, what's imagined, and what Severian himself might be hiding from us.
Exactly. And woven through this unreliable narration are some really big themes like memory and identity, guilt and redemption, the nature of reality itself, and even the power of storytelling.
So for those who haven't read it, and even for those who have, let's set the stage a little. We're talking about a far future Earth where the sun is dying, technology is both advanced and decaying, and strange creatures roam the landscape.
The setting itself is almost like a character. This dying Earth becomes a reflection of Severian's own internal struggles, his search for meaning and purpose in a world that seems to be falling apart.
Okay, let's follow Severian's journey. He starts as an apprentice in the Torturers Guild, but then he's expelled for an act of mercy. He falls in love with a client and kills her to spare her from a worse fate.
Which, for a torturer, is quite the irony. It raises all sorts of questions about morality and justice right from the start. And that act sets Severian on this path that takes him across this strange and decaying world.
He travels from the decaying city of Nessus to the mountains of Thrax, across the vast Pampas, and even journeys across a giant lake. Along the way, he meets a cast of characters who are just as enigmatic as he is.
Like the rebel leader Vodalis, the alluring Thecla, the giant Baldanders, and the mysterious Dr. Talos. Each one of them acts as a mirror to Severian, forcing him and us to question our assumptions about good and evil, right and wrong.
And one of the things that makes this journey so compelling is Severian's narration. He has an incredible memory, almost photographic, but it's also selective. He chooses what to remember, what to forget, and that makes you question everything he tells you.
It's a brilliant literary device. Wolfe forces the reader to become an active participant in the story, piecing together the truth from Severian's fragmented and often contradictory account.
It's like we're detectives trying to solve a mystery where the main witness is also the most unreliable. And speaking of mysteries, there's a lot we could unpack about Severian's time in the Torturers Guild. What do you think Wolfe is trying to say about institutions, tradition, and power in this world?
It's fascinating. The Guild is presented as this ancient institution, clinging to rituals and methods that seem barbaric. But they see themselves as upholders of justice, guardians of order in this chaotic world. This immediately throws us into a world of moral ambiguity.
Right, and that ambiguity is heightened by the fact that Severian, even after being expelled, still carries the tools and mindset of his former profession. Like that famous passage where he describes the different knives used for torture, each with its own specific purpose.
That scene is so chilling, yet so beautifully written. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about Severian's character, his attention to detail, and the way he views the world. And remember, he narrates the entire story looking back on these events.
Which adds another layer of complexity. It makes you wonder how his perspective on the Guild and on his own actions might have changed over time.
Absolutely, and that's what makes The Book of the New Sun such a rewarding read. It's a book that demands your attention, your active participation, and your willingness to question everything you think you know. It really does. And as Severian travels further from Nessus, we see him grapple with his past, his guilt, and his desire for redemption. These themes, they become even more intertwined as he encounters these new challenges and new characters.
Speaking of characters, let's talk about Thecla. She's one of the most fascinating and tragic figures in the entire series. On the one hand, she's like a symbol of innocence and purity, but she's also incredibly strong and resourceful.
And her relationship with Severian is so complex. He's drawn to her, but he also feels unworthy of her love. It's almost like he's punishing himself for his past actions by pushing her away.
Yes, and you see that pattern repeat with other women he encounters on his journey, like Dorcas and Jolenta. Each one represents a different aspect of love and desire. But Severian always seems to sabotage these relationships.
It's like he's trapped in this cycle of self-destruction, unable to escape the shadow of his past. And this ties back to the theme of memory, which is so central to the whole series.
Severian's memories are both a blessing and a curse, right? He remembers everything, but he can't escape the pain of his past. It's like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders.
And that weight is compounded by the fact that he's constantly questioning the nature of reality itself. Are the events he's recounting truly happening, or are they, figments of his imagination? Wolfe never gives us a clear answer, and that's what makes the book so unsettling.
You're constantly on edge, wondering what's real and what's not. And then there are those strange creatures. Severian encounters the Elzabo, the Undine, the man-apes. Are these real beings, or are they metaphors for something else?
That's the brilliance of Wolfe's writing. He blends the real and the surreal so seamlessly that it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. These creatures could be seen as representations of Severian's inner demons, the primal forces that lurk beneath the surface of his civilized facade.
And let's not forget the autarch, the seemingly immortal ruler of the Commonwealth. He's a figure of immense power, but he's also surrounded by decay and decline. What does his presence tell us about the nature of power and the inevitability of change?
The autarch is a fascinating character because he embodies both the height of power and the depths of despair. He's ageless, yet his world is crumbling around him. It's like he represents the futility of clinging to power in the face of inevitable change.
And that sense of futility is echoed in the decaying landscapes Severian travels through. Cities are crumbling, technology is failing, and nature itself seems to be dying.
The setting itself becomes a metaphor for the state of the Commonwealth, a society that's lost its way and is slowly collapsing in on itself.
And then there's the new sun itself. It's a symbol of hope, of renewal, but it's also a dying sun. It's like Wolfe is saying that even hope is finite, that even the brightest light eventually fades.
And that ties back to the cyclical nature of time, which is another recurring theme in the series. The past is never truly gone. It continues to haunt the present. And the future is uncertain, always in a state of flux.
There's that passage where Severian describes the ruins of an ancient city, and he says something like, "The past is a vast ocean, and we are all swimming in it." It's such a powerful image, and it perfectly captures the way the past continues to shape our present.
And how we are all ultimately products of our history, both personal and collective. It's a reminder that we can't escape the past, but we can choose how we respond to it.
Speaking of responding to the past, Severian's journey is ultimately about seeking redemption for his actions. But can a torturer truly find redemption? What does that even look like in a world as bleak as this one?
That's the central question of the series, isn't it? And Wolfe doesn't offer any easy answers. Severian's path to redemption is a long and winding one, full of trials and tribulations. He makes mistakes, he hurts people, and he struggles with his own inner demons.
And yet, there are moments of grace, moments where he shows compassion and selflessness, like when he saves Triskel from the man-apes or when he helps the dying soldier in the forest.
Those moments offer glimpses of Severian's potential for good, but they're always overshadowed by the darkness of his past. It's like he's constantly battling with himself, trying to overcome the weight of his sins.
And then there's that shocking moment where he encounters the boy who calls himself Severian, a mirror image of himself. It's a chilling encounter, and it raises all sorts of questions about identity, fate, and the nature of self.
That scene is so unsettling because it suggests that Severian is not in control of his own destiny, that he's being manipulated by forces beyond his comprehension.
Which ties back to the theme of unreliable narration. Can we trust anything Severian tells us, or is he just a pawn in a larger game?
It's a question that haunts the entire series, and it's one of the things that makes the Book of the New Sun so intellectually stimulating. It forces you to think critically, to question everything, and to embrace the ambiguity.
And that ambiguity extends to the ending of the series, which is both hopeful and unsettling. Severian seemingly achieves a form of redemption, but the future remains uncertain. It's like Wolfe is saying that even in a dying world, there's always the possibility of renewal, but there are no guarantees.
It's an ending that leaves you with more questions than answers, which is exactly what a good book should do. It stays with you long after you finished reading, prompting you to revisit it again and again, each time uncovering new layers of meaning.
And that's the true mark of a masterpiece. It's a book that continues to evolve and grow in your mind, just as Severian evolves and grows throughout the series.
Absolutely. And the Book of the New Sun is a testament to the power of literature to transport us to other worlds, to challenge our assumptions, and to make us think deeply about the big questions that haunt us all.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to ponder. Before we let them go, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that really sets Wolfe apart as a writer, his use of language.
It's incredible. Wolfe's prose is so rich and layered, and he weaves together archaic language with scientific jargon in a way that creates this truly unique and immersive reading experience. It's almost like he's inventing a new language for this strange and distant future.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to use obscure words and complex sentence structures. It can be challenging at times, but it's also incredibly rewarding. It forces you to slow down, to pay attention to every word, and to really savor the language. It's like he's inviting you to participate in this linguistic puzzle, where each piece unlocks a deeper meaning.
And it's not just the vocabulary. Wolfe's use of metaphor and imagery is masterful. Remember Severian's description of the house absolute, the autarch's palace? It's this strange, labyrinthine structure that seems to defy the laws of physics. And the way Wolfe describes it, you can almost feel yourself getting lost in its endless corridors and hidden chambers.
Yes, and there's that other passage where Severian compares the dying sun to a wounded beast bleeding light across the sky. It's such a vivid and haunting image, and it perfectly captures the mood of the whole series.
Wolfe's language is like a tapestry woven together from threads of poetry, philosophy, and science fiction. It's a style that's both beautiful and challenging, and it's one of the things that makes the Book of the New Sun such a unique and unforgettable reading experience.
Well said. I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore in the Book of the New Sun.
It's a book that rewards multiple readings each time you revisit it. You'll discover new layers of meaning, new connections, new insights.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, revealing deeper and deeper truths with each layer you remove. And yet there's always that core mystery at the center, that sense of wonder and awe that never quite goes away.
It really is a book that keeps you thinking long after you've turned that last page. And for those listening who might be inspired to pick up the Book of the New Sun, what advice would you give them going in?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, patience is key. Don't expect a straightforward narrative. Embrace the ambiguity, pay attention to the details, and be prepared to reread certain passages multiple times. It's a book that rewards close reading, and the more you invest in it, the more you'll get out of it.
I think that's great advice. It's not a book you can just skim or rush through.
Yeah.
You have to let it wash over. You let the language and the imagery sink in.
Right, and don't be afraid to get lost in the world. One of the things that makes the Book of the New Sun so compelling is its sense of mystery and wonder. Wolfe doesn't spell everything out for you. He leaves room for interpretation, for imagination.
You know, one thing we haven't talked about much is the humor in the book. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. The Severian has this wry sense of humor, a way of observing the absurdity of the world around him.
Oh, absolutely. There are moments where you'll find yourself chuckling at his dry wit, his self-deprecating remarks. And those moments of levity are so important because they prevent the book from becoming too heavy or oppressive. They remind us that even in a world as bleak as this one, there's still room for humor, for finding the absurd in the midst of the tragic.
I think that's a testament to Wolfe's skill as a writer. He can balance these different tones, the dark and the light, the serious and the humorous, in a way that feels completely natural and organic.
And it's all done through Severian's voice, which is one of the most distinctive and memorable voices in all of literature. It's this strange mix of erudition and naivete, of worldliness and innocence.
Yeah.
He's a character who can be both insightful and completely oblivious, and that makes him all the more fascinating.
Yes, and that unreliable narration keeps you constantly guessing.
Yeah.
You're never quite sure if you can trust him, if he's telling the whole truth, or if he's even aware of the deeper implications of his own story.
And that's what makes the Book of the New Sun such a challenging and rewarding read. It's a book that demands your active participation, your willingness to question everything, and your ability to embrace the unknown.
So to wrap things up, would you say the Book of the New Sun is ultimately a pessimistic or optimistic work?
That's a tough question. I think it's both. It's a book that acknowledges the darkness and suffering in the world, the inevitability of decay and decline. But it also offers glimpses of hope, of redemption, of the enduring human spirit that strives for meaning and connection, even in the face of oblivion.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's a book that acknowledges the complexities of life, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. And it leaves us with a sense of wonder, a sense of possibility, a sense that even in a dying world, there's still beauty to be found, stories to be told, connections to be made.
And that's what makes it such a powerful and enduring work of literature. It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading a book, that continues to resonate in your mind, prompting you to revisit it again and again each time, discovering new layers of meaning, new depths of beauty, new insights into the human condition.
Well said. I think we've given our listeners plenty to chew on for now. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep reading. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of the New Sun.